I thought this could go bad. And then I thought, why am I doing this?
After that conversation, has it made you think differently?
And it just said, Machine Gun Kelly. And I thought, oh no, I'm dead.
You're saying it could be a very valuable mindset to adopt.
I think you should adopt it the day you finish law school and start working. I just didn't.
Is big law against LinkedIn?
The first post I did, actually, I think it took me about 8 hours.
Did that come from a fear of rejection?
These are skills that they don't teach you in law school. I think that can only help you be a better lawyer.
You don't need to be controversial in the way that you shock people.
You think that by doing that, you're going to sound like a lawyer. People are going to be more respectful of you and you will make a bigger impact. But I don't think that's that effective.
You can't outsmart AI in law, so do this instead. People panic about AI taking over. They worry they're being replaced, hoping their jobs will stay safe. But here's the truth. AI will never replace what truly sets you apart. Your unique blend of expertise, empathy, and judgment. It's the human connection, the trust you build, the way you make relationships in a way that no machine ever could. And when you lead with that, no AI update can touch your value. Start focusing on what makes you irreplaceable as a lawyer. In this conversation with M&A partner at K&L Gates, David Edgar, we discuss why the majority of lawyers are scared to put themselves out there online, how to be a better lawyer in a way that no one teaches you in law school, and how to authentically engage online without crossing boundaries or jeopardizing client and firm relationships. And most importantly, learn how to be future-proof as a lawyer. David, why do you think a lot of lawyers don't put themselves out there on LinkedIn?
Well, I think lawyers in general are very analytical. They're very focused on maybe, presenting a perfect image. And I think that when you're doing something like this, it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to write the perfect post or present yourself in the perfect way. That is one thing I think I've gotten better at. I never went on it with the idea of let me present myself as what I think, a global mergers and acquisitions lawyer should be like. You've probably seen in my posts, I tend to wear sneakers a lot. I tend to wear jeans, shirts, not suit and ties. So I decided I was going to present who I am as authentically, and as real as I could. But yeah, I think a lot of lawyers are just very hesitant to do that. I think they also believe that they kind of want to please everyone. You never know where your client might be. I want to look this particular way or talk in a particular way. Maybe I have to write in a very lawyerly way so that I sound serious and intelligent. When I think actually, and if you look at the research, I've looked into that a little bit, it's the opposite, that the more clearly you can communicate, the more you can take complicated things and make them understandable, the more intelligent you actually come across, as opposed to laden it with complicated, sentence structures and big words and things. So I think it takes a different approach than what I think most lawyers are think about when they're writing or when they're doing things like we're doing. And I think if people focus on contributing, adding value, learning new things, the rest, the more outcome focused things will probably take care of themselves. But that wasn't the focus for me when I started.
It's super powerful what you just said about, being on there, appreciating the platform for what it is, adding value, making connections, and the results will look after themselves. That's a true entrepreneur mindset, that.
Well, you would know, but I don't think of myself that way, but it's great that it's great that you say that. No, I totally believe that. I think the best thing for me was focusing more on what can I add.
I definitely agree with you. And I had to really unlearn how to write because I just had this way of writing, which was very lawyery, as you say. It was loads of words, complicated words, over-explaining things, too much information, very detailed, things that just people don't want to see and are going to completely deter people when you put it out there on LinkedIn or even when you're copywriting on other platforms or channels. So I completely agree. You have to just kind of think okay, how would a lawyer act? Okay, I need to act differently, but still be my
Right.
authentic self, which is very confusing, right?
Yeah, you have to unlearn. The word you used is exactly the way I would think about it. When you're in law school and you're learning all of this new way of, thinking about the world, as they call it, thinking like a lawyer, writing like a lawyer, it's actually fun and it's enjoyable and it's almost like a new toy that you want to play with. And when you start to, get practicing, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun to write lawyerly letters and use all that expertise that you spent all that time and money acquiring. And you think that by doing that, you're going to sound like a lawyer and people are going to be more respectful of you and you will make a bigger impact by doing that. And many lawyers, though, never get beyond that. So they do that as a first year practicing lawyer and as a 40th year practicing lawyer. But I don't think that's that effective. I think what you do at some point, as you develop those skills, is you have to then unlearn them and find ways to forget about a lot of those things and explore new ways of communicating and explaining things to people. And once you do that, I think you become much more effective.
In our last conversation, you said to me, a lot of lawyers are worried about being too shocking and saying things that are potentially out of line because they've got eyeballs on them from clients and colleagues and all sorts of people. And I said to you, well, writing a LinkedIn post, you don't need to be controversial in the way that you shock people. It could be just simply hooking them or making them feel like they want to know more. After that conversation, has it made you think differently about writing legal posts?
Yes, I'm going to try that immediately. I may try that tomorrow in one of my posts. But yeah, I think about that. But again, that's a skill I need to do better at. I mean, I think one of the reasons I started posting on LinkedIn was I did feel like I have a capacity to explain complicated things in a bit more of a simpler way. But I still, an M&A is very complicated. It has a lot of different things. And the more you know about a topic, I think Steven Pinker, the Harvard psychologist, cognitive psychologist, he calls it the curse of knowledge. And he believes that's probably the leading reason that people write so poorly. And I posted a little bit about that. I think it's absolutely true, especially with academics, doctors, lawyers, people who have spent a lot of time developing a lot of expertise. You kind of can go into rabbit holes. And you also assume that people know what you know. That's what he meant by that concept of a curse of knowledge, that you think that because you know something, everyone else does. So you tend to gloss over and skip a lot of the foundational, more things that matter to people, jumping ahead into other things, and you don't even realize you're doing it. So I think that I'm good at doing that in my posts. I think where maybe I definitely need improvement is what you're talking about, taking that even a step further and figuring out how can I even more distill it. How can I do better in luring people into my conversation with a good title or a catchy intro, finding things that matter to people and then pulling that out into the post. And I am going to take your advice on that and try to make some improvements in that area.
Yeah, I think your posts are brilliant. I definitely think you can make someone feel like they have to read it, even if they don't need to know about M&A deals.
I love what I do, and I do think there's a lot of connections between mergers and acquisitions and other areas of law, or even just negotiations, life. There's many skills. Just like I've spent so much time, and we've talked about that, connecting things outside of mergers and acquisitions and corporate law to what I do. I think I can do a better job of showing other people, why some of the skills that you develop doing what I've done for so long can help them in their work, in their life, relationships, other things. There's a lot of, overlap, I think, in lessons that I can work on in terms of getting people to sort of see that and be interested in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And actually, just kind of going off topic here about your LinkedIn, because I feel like I've got so many ideas for you. and you're just kind of like triggering my thoughts with this. But when you link it to personal life or like life in general, M&A acquisitions or M&A, it makes it so relatable to people who are not even considering M&A, but maybe in the future, because like, for example, you could target someone through your post and they may not be considering anything to do with what you're offering, but 2 years down the line, they might be needing someone like you.
Mm-hmm.
So then they think, well, I've seen David in my post, in my feed,
Right.
like every week, but
Yeah.
his posts are super interesting because they've grabbed my attention because they're talking about something that is on a personal level, very interesting. And he's related it to M&A, which is very clever. I'm going to actually contact him because he's top of mind, So I think you can do it in such a clever way. And also people are not doing that. I don't see any M&A lawyers or even really many lawyers talking about their area of law and relating it to something completely different so that it engages everybody, not just your direct clients or lawyers. So I think you could do so much with that. And I think you're already doing a lot with it. Like, I mean, it interests me because like I see your posts and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But obviously I don't need an M&A lawyer.
Right. Well, and I do think that's where using different media I found was helpful. Things like pictures, trying to involve my family in some of the posts. Connor, our 8-year-old, is often featured in different ways in some of the posts. And I think that has been quite helpful. And even that took a lot of thinking and, brooding about it, worrying about it. I've told people that the first post I did, actually, I think it took me about 8 hours to hit post. So I drafted it, thought about it, and, I just sat on it. And, Victoria kept telling me, did you post it? Because I was telling her I'm going to finally get on to LinkedIn and start posting a little bit. And she said, that sounds like a good idea. Didn't really know much about what LinkedIn was about. And then she kept asking, did you post it? Did you post it? Did you post? And I said, no, I was worried about it. So it really took me about 8 hours before I finally hit that button. And that time gradually, very slowly, reduced, where now I find myself sometimes I just hit post. I don't even realize, what am I doing? I just hit post on that. So it's just, it is something where you have to practice and be consistent. And as you said, Holly, not expect instantaneous results. It is a long game of just sharing knowledge, contributing where you can, hopefully finding interesting people that, you can connect with. And then you see where that takes you. You can't expect that the first post you do, somebody's going to, give you work or a new speaking gig or something like that. It's a longer game and you have to approach it that way.
What you're telling me from this story, it took you 8 hours to actually hit post. You're overthinking it. You're worrying about it. Did that come from a fear of rejection?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're putting yourself out and your ideas, and you're not used to doing that. I mentioned I wasn't really active on social media doing other things. So I wasn't used to doing that. I'm sure people coming up now, or even if those who do that more, that may not be as big of an issue to them. But for someone like me, and I think many lawyers probably are quite similar, you are very focused on what other people think of you and how they perceive you. If you're at a big law firm like I am, a global law firm, I think it's probably worse. There's more, people that are maybe thinking about what you're doing. Probably a little easier if you have your own business or you're running a smaller firm. I think, perhaps there it's a different dynamic. But for me, yeah, I was very worried about how am I going to be perceived? What will people think of me? Obviously, I'm in a kind of a high stakes area of law where, it's serious business. And there's a lot of people that are, understandably very focused on that. And will they want to see their, lawyer posting on LinkedIn or doing other things? And I think, yeah, all of those things were going through my mind. But at the end of the day, I also thought to myself, well, one of the characteristics of a great M&A lawyer, and probably any lawyer, is good judgment and the ability to make sound decisions. And one of those is, what am I going to post and how am I going to present myself? And so I do think you have to maybe use a little more of that judgment and sensitivity, doing what we do as lawyers posting, than maybe you might, if you're in a different profession.
So I think that's a really interesting point, David, and it's one that we hear an awful lot, which is that lawyers are afraid to start posting, to put their voice out there. And I think it's that piece around the criticism. What was the response of your clients and the other lawyers in your firm?
I think it's been mixed, right? I think there are people that are just, wow, this is really cool. And I think it's also inspired some people to post. I've seen more M&A lawyers posting. I've seen other lawyers at my firm posting more, which has been great. I try to support that where I can. I think overall it's been, very positive. I would say, Helen, one interesting thing is when I actually started posting, for whatever reason, I was thinking of one particular person who happened to be the general counsel of a big public company that I had done some deals for, but wasn't really working for. In my mind, I just kind of thought, would someone like that, who's really accomplished, very, very successful, is this something that he would want his M&A lawyer doing? And I was worried about that. And again, I don't know why that particular person came into my mind because I wasn't actually doing a deal at the time. Well, one of my posts was a post with a photo attending a Machine Gun Kelly concert. And I linked it to M&A. And what I was saying was, hey, it's chaotic. This was a crazy, chaotic scene. Once MGK got up and started performing, it was great. And the crowd was into it and it came in together. And I thought that's very similar to an M&A deal where there's a lot of different things going on and it can be quite chaotic. But if it's done well, it's almost like a symphony. It's an orchestra that comes together and it's great. So I posted about that. And I even posted a picture from the concert. And I was super worried. And I thought, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? This was the first time I think that I actually maybe did a picture. And but certainly one where I was at a concert. I was, wearing a T-shirt and sneakers and stuff. So I thought this could go bad. And then I thought, why am I doing this? I have a successful practice enough. I'm busy. I mean, what am I doing subjecting myself to this? Only bad things can come from me posting this picture. But I hit post. It went out. And what was funny was a couple weeks later, I'm on a conference call and I see my email, pop up. And it's this person. I hadn't talked, to him in a long time. And it said the subject, all I could see was the subject. And it just said, Machine Gun Kelly. And I thought, oh no, I'm dead. This is it.
The legal industry is changing fast, and if you're not keeping up, you're falling behind. AI is taking over the admin work. Networking isn't just about in-person events anymore. Clients want connection and they're finding it online. The future? We think it's law firms hiring based on authenticity and credibility, associates building personal brands that rival their partners, lawyers who think like entrepreneurs will be the ones thriving. The result? The lawyers who adapt are building relationships, gaining trust, and bringing in the clients long before they walk into a room. The question is this: are you ready to step into this revolution? If this sounds overwhelming to you, don't worry. The first thing you can do is join our newsletter, receive exclusive advice on building your influence as a lawyer, future-proofing your career, and be the first to know what we're launching in the future, and trust me, you'll want to be the first to know. Join the inner circle. See you on the inside.
And it said the subject, all I could see was the subject, and it just said Machine Gun Kelly. And I thought, oh no, I'm dead. This is it. I struggled through the conference call I was on, trying to get off, thinking, what is this? So then I didn't open the email. Similar to not sending the post, I just sat on the email. And of course, I looped in Victoria, my wife, and said, I can't open this. She's like, yeah, but what does it say? I'm like, I don't want to open the message because I thought this could not be good. And I went through all the things lawyers would do, right? It's like, I've been fired. Just a million things. So finally, after a few hours, I opened the message and it said something to the effect of, hey, I saw this post, didn't realize you were a fan. And I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know if he was or wasn't. And then it said, "I've been enjoying your posts. Keep it up." And that was it. And I thought, wow, how crazy is that? That the person I was most concerned about I used him as almost like just not him personally, but just like the example of that, would actually see something, never commented on it, never liked it or anything, but gave me an encouragement. And I was just so grateful for that. And I, of course, told him that I was really appreciative of that he did reach out and, let me know. So that gave me a little bit of fuel to keep going.
I think that's the epitome of the LinkedIn lurker, isn't it? You don't know they're there. You've got
Yes.
no idea that they're
Right.
sometimes the ones that they're not connected. You've
Yeah,
never seen
exactly.
anything from them. Then out of nowhere that you get the Machine Gun Kelly email.
Right. You have no right. And you also have no idea what resonates with people until you think you may have ideas, but you really don't know what, will really attract somebody or not attract or be interested to somebody that's interesting. And then you see where it goes. And then Holly, as you've told me many times, then you should iterate on that. If you want, take feedback on what seems to be working, what doesn't, try different things. And of course that's a good thing to do too.
Looking at the bigger picture then in terms of big law on this, and you said that there's a lot of pressure perhaps in the bigger firms to perhaps toe the line a bit more, or that's what you're perhaps alluding to, or some people might feel that. I know that we've seen in the UK in particular, there was actually guidance from some of the biggest firms that they were discouraging junior associates from posting for fear of what they might post. Then I think we've got other firms saying kind of the opposite now, but there are some guidelines in place. What's your opinion? Is big law against LinkedIn?
I don't know about that. I'm not expert enough really to opine on it. I agree with you though, Helen, that I think that it probably ranges. I think my firm has always been very forward looking, I think, on a lot of different fronts in that area. So I don't think we necessarily have that. But in general, I think there's also good reasons for that. Again, if you think about being at a large law firm like I am, you have clients around the globe with different interests, with different things and different focuses. And you also have partners of yours and associates that you work with and want to develop and see have successful careers. And they also have different perspectives and ways. And it's very important also that law firms, I assume, right, they have their brands and they have their way that they want to be perceived. So you can't assume all of that away. And I try to be sensitive to those sorts of things. I've been at my firm for over 20 years, so I have at least a sense of how we like to be perceived and what our strengths are in the markets and clients that we serve. So I try to be sensitive to that. And I do think if you have hundreds of associates posting different things, there could very well be issues that would impact those people directly, clients of theirs or others in the firm or the firm itself. So I do think, again, it comes back to that area in my mind of judgment. Are you exercising good judgment? Are you thinking carefully about what you're doing, how you're presenting yourself? It doesn't to me mean being fake or inauthentic, but you do have to be sensitive to how you're coming across and how you're doing it. So in my own mind, I have certain guidelines that I try to follow for myself. So far, I think they've worked fine.
I just want to touch on what you've just said about judgment and authenticity. How do you successfully achieve a balance between the two as a lawyer?
I don't think it's been as complicated as I thought originally. I was very worried that I would almost have to be two people and just sort of disconnect from who I really am in order to post. I think that people do want to see who you are as a person. So I think that in that sense, you can use LinkedIn or podcasting or doing LinkedIn Lives like I do to showcase who you are as a person. But that doesn't mean you don't want to be sensitive to the information that you're conveying, what you're talking about, how you're talking about it. For example, just in my own practice, what I do, I really don't comment on current M&A deals that are in the news. I might have made a comment or two, maybe when Elon Musk was taking over Twitter, maybe, but I'm not sure I did. I try to avoid that. And it makes maybe my posting a little less interesting, a little less timely. But again, I'm sensitive to the fact that we have lawyers all around the country, all around the world. We may or may not represent parties to that. We may be involved in it. Would be impossible, and I think irresponsible of me to wade in on that. And, before I even know, if I was going to do that, then I would, at least again, from my own perspective, I would want to run that through our, internal conflicts process. We obviously have a great, marketing team and others that are, very well connected to those sorts of things. And they're very sensitive to how, that may impact people that I don't even know, right? That I'm not even familiar with. So I'm sensitive to those sorts of things. But otherwise, I try to just be who I am. I try to be, sensitive about what I'm posting, but I'll generally post about personal things. I'll post about M&A. I'll post about, negotiations and other things. I don't think it's created any problem. So I think more lawyers should try that, be less timid about it. But again, just exercise good judgment in how you're approaching it. M&A, for example, is very serious business, no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean you have to take yourself seriously in what you do. It doesn't mean that everything is a joke or anything. You have to take your job and your work very seriously, but there's still a lot of room for the personal side of things, for being human, for having empathy for people, for understanding the difficulties that you're going through and other people are going through. And so I do think showcasing that makes my world, I hope, more inviting to people. And hopefully clients, I mean, if I usually don't focus on that, but if I think about it, hopefully what that means is that clients or future clients might say, I would like to work with this person. I know it's an important deal. It may be the most important thing that I am doing in my life, perhaps, or one of the most important things. But and I know I'm going to be going through some difficult times, and it's going to be a tough journey. This is someone I'd like to be on that journey with me, because I know that, substantively he's going to be on top of everything, but he'll keep things a bit fun, enjoyable. I could be in a conference room, overnight or something like this, working on a deal, and and feel like I have a connection. So I think showcasing that is important if you want to, develop clients that really trust you, that value you, and ultimately that like you.
Definitely. Me and Helen were having a conversation about this exact point, helping people know, like, and trust you by creating authentic content, exactly what you're talking about, showing your true self, but you don't need to go into, private details, whatever you're comfortable with
Right.
showing, because as we say, people buy from people. And one of the points that keeps coming up actually for me is this idea of, if you're authentic to yourself and you post content based on that, then you're pretty much future proofing whatever you do. So you're doing that by potentially consciously or unconsciously. You're building your own personal brand on LinkedIn, and you're future proofing yourself by being able to have the option of potentially doing anything else. You've got your live, your podcast, and you're putting yourself out there, and people know you as the M&A lawyer, but they know you for being you as well. So you could do literally anything and people would follow you because they like you as a person. I'm just wondering if you got any thoughts about that, or it's even occurred to you.
I haven't thought about that much, but it makes sense to me. I mean, it does make sense. I mean, I've been doing what I've been doing for so long that, it's kind of part of me. Um, but yeah, I do think, first of all, I just think developing new skills is very useful. I mean, for example, we're seeing much more about AI and how AI is impacting what you both do, for sure. Copywriting, writing posts, right? There's lots of stuff in what I do. We're seeing much more impact on lawyers and thinking about what lawyers may be doing in the future. But AI can never be, I don't think, at least not now and anytime soon, the person and the unique combination of skills and traits and interests that each person has. So to me, developing new skills, whether they're doing copywriting or LinkedIn posting or doing podcasts or other things, I think that can only help you be a better lawyer, whether that's if that's what you want to continue doing. So if you want to continue working at a big firm, that I think these are skills that are quite helpful. Who wouldn't want to communicate better? Speak more clearly, write more clearly, find ways to engage people. Those all sound like, good things that you would want to do if you're a lawyer. Or, as you say, Holly, if you want to do something outside of law or outside of a large law firm and you want to go off on your own or as you two have done or do other things, then yes, these are skills that that they don't teach you in law school. At least they didn't when I was in law school, and that they're valuable. And you can enrich your life, enrich other people's lives, and I guess it also make money, so you can actually survive. So those are things that are quite useful, and I think it's a great way to think about it.
That's very, very interesting. I think you're thinking in a very forward-thinking way. And I also like the fact that when I asked you about future-proofing yourself by being authentic, you mentioned AI. That was the first thought that came into your head. Well, if I become authentic, this is something that AI can't do. And people are looking for authenticity within law and for lawyers, which is something that AI just isn't capable of doing at this point anyway.
At some point, that may be gone too. But for me, and that's why, Helen, your point too, I mean, the ability to be vulnerable and I think be able to let people into what you're thinking about, not just positive things, but worries, concerns, other things, I think is something I had to really learn, because that did not come naturally to me. Those are things that really separate probably successful people generally, but certainly for lawyers, those really separate people. It's not the technical expertise or knowledge, which I used to believe was the most critical. It's actually, and Helen, I know you write a lot of posts about that, but it's actually the things that those things you don't think about that are actually what make you successful, that advance you at a law firm, that, get clients willing to work with you. And that's a hard thing, because that's not in a book. I mean, you might read some books, but that's not in what your law school curriculum was. And for me, I came to that realization way, way, way too late.
And I think that's what I see in so many junior lawyers, actually, that they're not taught the skills that they need to know if they really want to get ahead. So many people reach a ceiling in their career where they think, okay, I'm this great technical lawyer, I've done all of this great stuff, but now I can't get any further. Without building that book of business, having the client base, having the relationships internally, externally, and all of that stuff. And what was interesting for me was that, so I started out when I left law on a coaching journey because I wanted to coach people to help empower them to realize these things. Along that journey, I then realized that the best way to empower them was actually to help them understand how to grow that business that has become through LinkedIn, through podcasting. And actually, I strongly feel now that these are, if anything, the greatest things that I can help people learn about in order to grow their book of business in law. How powerful would you say things like LinkedIn, podcasting are in terms of growing a book of business and becoming potentially a law firm partner now and in the future?
To me, it's becoming more and more critical. I think I probably succeeded as well as I did in spite of myself, I think, in some ways, because again, I mentioned to you before we started, I just since I was a kid have been very introverted, suffering from a lot of social anxiety and other things that have impacted negatively. Some of those traits are positive. I mean, and some of the things, allowed me to be a great associate, allowed me to become a very, capable M&A lawyer. But, one of I forget who said it, but it comes up a lot. This idea that, what has gotten you here won't get you there. That resonated in me when I first heard that, because a lot of the skills that you develop as a law student and then really put into practice as an associate, particularly at a larger firm where you're really, your responsibilities are really challenging and detail oriented, and you need to be, very, very capable in the technical side. But at some point you reach a level and you can't really tell when it's there. It's definitely, it could be when you've made partner, but really it should be before that. And you write a lot about that and talk about it, and I think it's completely true. And you need to start thinking more like an owner, more how do I contribute to, my firm, whether it's a firm of one or two or a firm of a few thousand, and developing your own ability to attract or retain clients. I mean, it's critical, and it also makes the practice much more enjoyable. It's a better way. I mean, not only will you be rewarded more internally, but I do think it will make you, feel better about the work that you're doing and more connected to things. I think that's very important. And doing what you're doing and helping them to see that earlier on in their career is going to make a world of difference.
It's really interesting what you said, David, about saying Helen asked you the question, do you think people who are looking to become partner or partners should be, I guess, putting themselves out there a little bit more, speaking up on LinkedIn, potentially having a podcast like you do? And you said, well, in actual fact, they can be doing it before then. If they think about the firm and they add value to the firm, I think that's a very, very interesting point, because I think a lot of associates or people who are, I guess, lower down in the food chain just don't think like that. They don't have that mindset at all. But you're saying, in actual fact, it could be a very valuable mindset to adopt, right?
I think you should adopt it the day you finish law school and start working. I just didn't. And I think, and also we didn't have the same, opportunities with LinkedIn, podcast, other sorts of things. And I think we're seeing a little bit more of that. I think it's important to not devalue what you can contribute, right? I mean, there are some people who would say, well, I don't really know a lot yet. I'm still starting out. But there's lots of things that you do know about that you can contribute, that you can, it's the same benefit I think I find on M&A teams, where having a diverse team in all the different ways of thinking about diversity, including experience levels. That's also having a diverse team. It's amazing what people who've only been practicing a year or two can contribute if they're giving an environment where, their contributions are welcome. Of course, you have to make those contributions valuable. If you contribute a lot of things that, are not very valuable, then it becomes more difficult to contribute. But I think if you're very strategic and careful, it goes back to that judgment point we talked about. I think you can do that. And the best firms, I think, want that. Because ultimately it's people, and the success of a firm, whether it's a small firm or, a giant global firm, ultimately comes down to the people that are working every day. As you have younger people coming up, newer people with less experience, developing them, helping them to do that, I think is really important. And LinkedIn and podcasting and things just gives you another outlet from the traditional ways, like going to conferences or networking or things that I find much more difficult to do. So it's an alternative for people.
And I think as well, David, when you apply sort of, sales or marketing psychology to what you're saying as well, it makes perfect sense, because I remember that as well. When I was a junior in the law firm, some people would say to me, oh, you're far too junior. You're not that important here.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, as we've said, people buy from people, and the way that corporate sell services is not from corporate to corporate. Actually, in an ideal world, you would have relationships with all of your ideal clients at all levels of that organization. And it may be that your juniors are able to contribute whatever value, say in a legal or technical sense, but it also might be that on a night out or at a client event, one of them happens to be amazing at baseball and then can get on with the client really well on that level, and the client just loves that person. And I found that myself when I was junior, because I was a little bit of a party animal. I loved the cocktail parties. I get on with everyone. They'd all be joking with me the next day. I was really, really junior at the time, but that had value.
That's what clients ultimately, they want to feel a connection. They want to feel that you understand where they're coming from, what their fears are, what opportunities. And so the more connections that you can make, I think the better. And again, that was just something that I, did not focus as much on, as I was coming up, because, my strengths were much more the technical side. Luckily, the people recognized that. So that was good. I had clients that recognized that, and, great partners that I worked with at the firm that recognized that. But you reach a point where, again, you have to do something more. You have to differentiate yourself in other ways beyond just having technical expertise, which sometimes clients aren't able to even recognize, or they just assume that of course you have that technical expertise because that's why we're hiring you.
This is what people don't understand, is the fact that the baseline standard for lawyers is that they are technical and they have the basic skills because they've learned it in law school and they've learned it through experience. And I think people think, well, I need to show that I'm like super knowledgeable in this area of law, and I need to show above and beyond that I can do this. When it's like, well, the clients just expect you to do it. So what more can you do? And this taps into the idea that we've been talking about throughout this whole conversation, which is to be visible, to show your personality, to show you as a person who is authentic and can provide a really good connection and service to that client. And I think it just perfectly just sums up everything we've been talking about in this conversation. Would you agree?
If you think about marketing a product or doing other things, it's never usually not the features or the actual product. It's how you feel, what connection you have to it. And I think with lawyers, it's very similar. I work with a lot of sophisticated clients. They're very knowledgeable. They know good lawyers from not so good lawyers. And so they do have the ability to distinguish somewhat in that regard. But I think it's that feeling of working with somebody that you know, that you like, that you have a sense that they understand you and can work with you to contribute to the goals that they want to achieve, I think is a much different thing. And there are some people, you have to have both.
And that point there, I think, is so key, David, that people get a feel for you. Because what people often don't realize, or especially a lot of lawyers, is that people buy or connect emotionally. So we can link this to anything. We can link this to relationships, to who you're being drawn to, who you want to work with. We can link this to LinkedIn posts. You're pulled into that post because it has an emotional hook. There's something in the hook that's emotional. The same with podcasts. You're drawn in because there's going to be something that impacts you. We then tend to sort of cognitively justify it later. Obviously,
Right.
as you say, it's table stakes that your lawyer is good enough, but it's where's the emotional connection?
If you'd like more information on how David could help you, go to the description of this podcast episode. If you want to join our inner circle, go to the description of this podcast episode to sign up to our newsletter. See you on the inside.